What's up guys, Jeff here from TheFloatLife, and we're bringing you a fun one today. This is a video we probably should have made a while ago, but I didn't think there was a need for it. Apparently I'm wrong. Brandon was telling me, Jeff, how come we don't have a rail install video? That's crazy, we sell rails. And I'm like, you know what? Okay, you're right, let's film one. So here today, we're gonna do a GT rail change. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch over from these stock straight rails over to you're gonna hit a hyper zoom on that one, it'll be super cool. Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah. GT WTF steep and deeps. Boom, get that steep and deep. Which one's on top, the steep or the deep? Steep. Nice, perfect, we nailed that one. So we're doing the steep and deeps today because this is actually Robert's new board, and he is a steep and deep rider. I ride the standards, the classic WTFs. Robert loves the steep and deeps. He's a flight fin rider, so he loves that extra clearance. Stability isn't quite as important to him as it is to me because he's got those flight fins, he's all locked. So steep and deeps are perfect for Robert. Me, I'm a classic guy, I'm old school, but Robert's all about that new. Pretty simple process. You do have to break the board all the way down though. So make sure you have like a really big workspace because you're gonna be putting parts everywhere and it's gonna be a little tricky to stay organized. So, but you shouldn't need too many tools. The nice thing is you only really need 2 wrenches unless you run into some hiccups along the way. But what you'll have is you'll have the TP25. This is the one that takes care of all like the foot pad screws, the fender screws, the bumper screws. This is the majority of the screws on your Onewheel. And again, it's a TP25. You can get away with a T25 on this one, which is just a standard Torx 25. That's actually what Future Motion sends you when you buy new foot pads or bumpers. They send you a T25. Technically it's TP25, but again, you can get away with just a T25. Where you can't get away with just a regular Torx, it's gonna be this guy right here. So this is a TP45, so that stands for Torx plus 45. This is for the axle bolts right here. It's also called a 45 IP, but make sure whatever you do not use a regular Torx 25 because you will strip those out and it'll just cause a huge mess. Then you gotta drill them, it's like a whole thing. So don't do that. If you need one of these, we do have them on our website. They're like $5, I think, so go pick one up. Let's get started. First things first, you're gonna wanna remove your fender. Oh man, that's so nice, isn't it? So I would not suggest using power tools. I would suggest using hand tools for everything, but for the sake of time, and because I've done this like 1,000 times before, I think it's okay to use power tools for me. So you guys should use hand tools. Once your fender or fender delete, if you got a fender delete, is removed, the next step is to pull off your bumpers. So what we're gonna do is flip the board over, and you'll have 2 screws on each side that go into the foot pad. These are the regular length screws. And then you'll have 2 screws in the front and 4 screws in the back that are actually short length screws. If you have an early model GT, some of the short screws might actually be regular length, but on the newer ones, they are all short. So here, I'll show you an example of what they look like comparatively. All right, there you go. We got the short screw and we got the regular length screw. Make sure that the short screws go in your bumper slots on the bottom, the very, very bottom there. And then the regular ones just go back into the foot pad from the bumper back here. Once you have all those screws out, back bumper should just peel straight off, easy. And then the front bumper actually slides out. So that'll be a whoop, slides right out. And then you gotta get to the hidden screws. Everyone misses these ones, but you've actually got screws right here underneath the foot pads going from the rails into the foot pads. I don't think these screws are super necessary. And as a matter of fact, whenever I take them out, I never really put them back in because I think they're more of a hassle than anything. I don't think they add really a ton of structural support to the foot pad, so I don't think you really need them. And it just makes taking your front foot pad off like that much more of a pain because it means you have to take your bumper off to take your front foot pad off. So it's like, why even have them? But they're there, so don't forget to take them out. And then while we're under here, now is a really good time to unplug your motor cable and your foot pad cable. So that's these 2 lock rings right here. This is your motor cable, this is your foot pad cable. You wanna make sure that you're really, really careful with these because if you break these, you are SOL, kind of. Yeah, it's not good. They're pretty semi-weak connectors, so you definitely want to be careful with them. If you break your motor lock ring cable, they do sell replacements on onewheel.com. I think they're like 30 bucks, but try to avoid that if you can help it. And then if you break your foot pad lock ring, you just have to buy a whole new foot pad for whatever those cost. Not ideal. Try not to break those. Go very, very gentle with them. But basically, you'll just grab this top lock ring right here. You don't need to worry about unscrewing this part right here. That will just stay solid. It's just this lock ring right here and this lock ring right here that you'll be turning. Yep, pop up, pop up. Just grab it with your fingers. You should be able to get it with your fingers. It is a little bit tough, but just unscrew them both until they're loose. And so this is what you want them to look like. Nice and loose. See that? Get that jiggle. Get that jiggle. There it is. And once they're loose, you can just pull them straight out. Boom, easy. And then the motor one, it may be a little tricky to pull it out right now because you do have a thick cable on there and you've got some cable tension and stuff. So as long as you've undone it, you can just sort of leave it for now and it'll sort of come unplugged as we get a little bit further along with the breakdown. So once you're done with those, the next thing while we're on the back side of the board anyway, we can pull off these little covers for the axle blocks. So it's 2 of the TP25 screws right there. So you should just be able to yank those out super easy. And those will fall right off. Don't lose those screws because those aren't fun to replace. Now we're done with the bottom of the board right now, so we will flip it back over and it is time to pull both of the foot pads off. You should only have 4 screws left for both foot pads. So we've got the 2 that are just right here by the tire. So boom, 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 easy. There we go. All right, we are so close to being done here. Next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull all of the screws out of this rail and pull this whole entire rail off. So we've got 2 screws back here, 2 screws up here. Those are all the TP25s. And then we've got the 2 axle bolt screws right here, which are TP45s. So let's take out the TP25s first. And once those are out, you grab your TP45. And for this, I would highly recommend that you don't use power tools. Again, not a good idea to use power tools in general, but for these, it's especially important because you do not want to strip these at all. You do not want to spin these. You don't want to break these. You want to be very careful with them. So these can be a little bit tough. They're held together with a lot of Loctite. So get your TP45, not Torx, Torx Plus, 45 IP, TP45. Yes, stick that in there. And just go counterclockwise. It's just a regular thread. And I like to loosen both of them up before I take them out completely. And you'll pull them all the way out. Cool. And once we do that, the rail should just pop right off. Easy. And then you've got your axle block right there as well. Set that to the side. And in interest of saving space, we'll just throw these rails off to the side. Now, you may be tempted when you put your new dubs on. You're like, you know what? These are so good. They are so much better than my stock rails. I don't need these anymore. I wonder if I could sell them for a couple of bucks online. Yeah, make some money back. Don't do it. Don't do it. Save these. So these are important because they have a serial number on the bottom of them that is linked directly to your board. If you ever need to send your board in for maintenance to Future Motion, they will not work on it unless you have these specific rails on this specific board. They will refuse service. So make sure you keep your rails. Put a rubber band on them, put them in the back of your dark closet, you know, back with all your other shameful stuff that you've got in the back of your closet. I don't care, but do not get rid of these. Now, once that one's done, flip her over, and we're gonna do the exact same process on this side right here. We're gonna remove these 2 TP25s, remove the axle bolts, which are what? Yeah, TP45s, good job. You guys are paying attention. And then once we do that, this rail will come off the exact same as the last one. Now, when you do this, everything's gonna kind of start to fall apart. So just a heads up, you're gonna have pieces falling out left and right. What we'll do is let's actually pull the motor out first on this side. So we'll do the TP45. And then that way it'll make it a lot easier for us to pull out the controller module and the battery pack. Okay, now at this point, we should be able to pull that motor plug out. Yep, came out nice and clean. and we just drop that motor right out there. There we go. Set that guy off to the side. You know what? While we've got Robert's tire off, I feel like we should swap him out, man. He's on this stock slick tire. This is rough. Hang on a second. Let me make a phone call.
Hello?
Wait a minute. Robert?
I'm getting a weird echo. Hold on.
Oh my God, he's here. Robert, I have your board apart right now. I was thinking, while it's apart,
Okay.
you have a stock tire here. We have two options for you. Soon, many more. Soon. So many options, your mind will be blown. But for now, we have Enduro or Street Pro 2.
Let's do it.
Okay.
The Street Pro 2.
All right,
I'm
do me
ready.
a favor. Do me a favor. Take this,
Okay.
take it to Keaton, and demand a tire swap.
Ooh, look at those Tiffany seals.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Julian was just asking about those. He's like, are these the new molded ones? Yes. Yes, they are.
I have something for you. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to put a Street Pro 2.
Right now?
Right now.
All right, let's
Or actually just anytime today.
Well, let's go.
All right.
Okay, bye.
You're not coming?
No.
We'll be back soon.
Okay,
after
bye.
more of these messages.
Now, while we've got it open, I should probably put a gasket in this guy.
Do you want to talk about your other addition to the controller?
No, the Sure Start? It's got a Sure Start. Sure Start's awesome. Put a Sure Start in your board. Why would you not? That's crazy. So one thing that we should talk about at this point is battery cable length. So the battery cable is the one that goes from the controller all the way back to the battery pack. It's this one solid single one right here. Sometimes when you go from stock rails to aftermarket rails, it can be a little bit short, but not to worry, it's easy to get a little bit extra length out of that. So if you open up the controller, you can see that there's actually plenty of extra wire length right here that can feed back through here to give you a little bit of extra slack. So what you can do is you can loosen this nut right here, and you'll loosen this nut, pull a little bit of slack. Don't pull too much, of course, because if you pull too much, you'll stress the wires, you could break something. But you could just pull, maybe like a couple of millimeters of a little bit of extra slack. Make sure you tighten that cable nut back down, because that's what keeps it like pinched and locked in place. And then you're good to go. You've got some extra cable length. So if you need extra cable length on the battery side, that's the way to go. Just be very, very, very gentle with it, and make sure you don't stress on those wires, because they are little thin gauge wires. But the XT60 connector from the battery is like really, really loose all the time, right? There's not a lot of stickiness on that. The XT60 and the XR and like all previous models was like way in there, directly in. It was like hard to get out. The GT is like pretty loose. So I would suggest putting a little bit of, I don't know, electrical adhesive on that, or at least hot glue. Or what some people are doing is they're actually pulling it out, pushing a little pin into the male end right there and kind of expanding it out a little bit, and so it'll stick in better. So however you want to fix that, probably a good idea while you're in here anyway, not a bad idea, to sort of tighten that up a little bit.
Yeah, I got your tire.
Done.
Right here.
Done already, huh?
Done.
Wow, that was quick. I haven't even had a chance to finish my boots yet.
Well, whose fault is that?
Mine, with these thin little bird lips, I'll never win. Thank you, sir. Appreciate.
All right.
Awesome.
High five.
Oh, super glad I just took that bit out, because I have to put this back on still, so. Whoopsies. Okay, so once we're at this spot, we now need to remove the second rail. It's just those 4 TP25 screws, super easy. Second rail, again, back of your closet. Don't get rid of these, save them. Okay, cool, we are officially halfway done. Round of applause. You're gonna add the coolest sound effects right there, I'm sure. This is great. We've got the board totally broken down. It's in all its bits and pieces. We've got everything super organized exactly where it's supposed to be. Then all we have to do now is do the exact opposite of what we just did, and it will just be your brand new fully built board. What I would suggest doing, so you know which rail is the left and the right, I would dry fit one of the rails. So I would take, let's start with our deep side right here. So take it and put it on, and oh no, look at that. There's a hole right here, and it doesn't seem to be in the correct spot. So this must be the wrong rail, right? So let's grab the other rail, check it, dry fit it, There we go. And oh, there we go. Look at that. It's the charge port. This is the correct one. So what I would do is I would take and start with the battery, since that's the heaviest side. It's sort of the side I like to start with first. And I would get that rail on there. There we go. Take one of your regular size screws and put all the screws back in the exact order that you took them out. So what I do when I'm putting Onewheels together is I like to put all the screws in really loose and then tighten them all down at the same time, because that helps to keep stuff from getting all weird and wonky and the angles not lining up. So it really helps things. So what you want to do is put these screws in nice and loose, just get the threads to catch, then grab the front controller and do the same. And when you're putting these screws back in the Onewheel, you want to make sure that you don't cross thread anything. So you want to be very careful. If the screw feels stiff, stop, back off, and start over. And again, don't use power tools, but if you are, make sure you're at the lowest possible torque setting. That's a 1. Do not crank it all the way. You don't want to over tighten stuff. You don't want to break stuff. So at this point, we can either put the other rail on and then drop the motor in like we do in the tire change video, or since we've already got the rail off and gone through the trouble of it, we can actually drop the motor in now and kind of save ourselves a little bit of frustration if you're not good at dropping the hub in, because the hub is really tight against the axle blocks and the rails as is. So it's probably easier to just get the motor in right now. So what I do is I will set it with the motor cable side up, and then I will put the correct axle block on there. The one with the handle is the correct one for the motor cable side. And you'll see there's a little notch right here. There's a little notch in the motor right there, in the axle. So there's also a corresponding notch in the axle block right there. And so what you'll do is just basically plug that in, right? Boom, done, easy. And then what you can do is set that in here, and you should be able to line everything up and get those axle bolts in. Cool, just get them in nice and loose. As long as you get a couple turns on them, they're good. And once that's in, support the whole board, roll it over. There we go. Go ahead and put this axle block on. Again, just key that little guy in. But you want to make sure you tuck the cable underneath. There's a little keeper for it right here in the bottom of the axle block. Okay, and once you have all 4 axle bolts in, you can go ahead and tighten those down. Now the axle bolts, they don't give us torque settings from the factory, but my official recommendation is tight as hell. As tight as you can freaking get them without stripping screws. That's pretty much how tight those need to go. Because what they'll do is they'll tend to loosen. Future Motion does recommend that you replace the axle bolts out of it after every tire change. I think that's a little overkill, but if you want to do manufacturer spec, that's what you're supposed to do. They do sell axle bolts on their website. I usually just do a little drip of blue Loctite on them, and that seems to be just fine. But once they get on there, you want to crank them down. Nice and tight, but whatever you do, don't strip them. Don't crank them so hard you shear the head bolts for some reason. If you're some sort of maniac, like Muscles Malone going to the gym too much. Now make sure that you tighten all these screws around here that you put in nice and loose. Now that we're ready to plug the motor cable back in, there's definitely something we should mention with the GT specifically. So we have heard lots of reports. We haven't had one in-house yet, but we've heard reports of people's motor cables being too short to like correctly plug back into the motor cable plug inside the controller module. There's people that have broken their lock rings right here from them being too short. That's kind of a big problem too. If you don't screw this on perfect, it can break pretty easy. So the good news is Future Motion does sell these on their website. You can go to onewheel.com and get them, this lock ring specifically. I think it's 30 bucks on there. But yeah, you can pick one of those up if you do break it. And then also, if it does break, especially while you're riding, it can come unplugged. So what we do with all homebrew rails, we do offer a motor cable retaining clip. And the cool thing about this is it even has a little air tag holder right here too. So you can stick an air tag in your Onewheel, which is rad. I'm gonna show you guys how to install this. It's super easy. You'll take this screw out of the insert right here. And then what you'll do is you'll go ahead and pull your motor cable plug out of the way, and you'll slide it on into the rail like this to where the bulk of it is in front. And you'll see it'll pop right down here in this extra install hole. Again, these don't work with stock rails. This is just for WTF. Slide it back just a little bit further, and then you'll plug your motor cable in to the port, and you will install your motor cable like normal. Turn it till it clicks. Don't go too far or else you will break it. And then what you'll do is you'll slide your cable retainer clip forward until that insert pops up in the hole. And then you will attach the screw. There we go. And we are locked right there. So you can see I'll unscrew it for demonstration purposes. If it does come undone, see how that cable is super loose right now? You still, now because of the motor cable retaining clip, you can't unplug it. So if that does happen on the trail or while you're out riding, you're not at high risk of your board just fully turning off and shutting off and dumping you. So that's good. So anyway, make sure that you twist that ring until it locks. Don't twist it too hard, but you'll feel a nice little click. And once that's done, let's go ahead and put our axle block covers back on. And once those are on, it's time to put our foot pads back on. I like to put my foot pads back on before my bumpers because I find it's a lot easier to screw in the lock ring right here from the bottom. And if you put your bumper on, it's tricky to do. So I set that on. And what I like to do is I like to put the top two in first. And again, I keep them a little bit loose so that we do have a little bit of play in the foot pad here for when we need to install the other ones, just in case everything isn't lining up perfect. And same with the rear. Just catch the threads on those two. And now you can plug in that foot pad cable. Super easy. It's exactly the same as the motor plug. You'll just plug it in. You'll feel it when it goes in. It helps too if you don't know which way to go. You see this little notch right here? That end is going to be closest to the foot pad. So it'll basically go like this. You'll wiggle it a little bit until you feel it go in. And then I actually like to twist the lock ring the opposite direction a little bit, kind of feel for it, wait until it clicks in, and then we'll rotate it clockwise until we get a nice click. And if you're feeling a ton of resistance, back off and try it again. But it should go until you get a nice little solid click in there. And again, don't twist it too hard. If you twist it too hard, you run into trouble. So go really, really gentle and easy with those. And once that's installed, it's time to put the bumpers back on. Got the handle one in the front. Again, it slides in. But heads up, if you wanna reassemble it correctly, remember you've got these two screws underneath the foot pad right here that go in. I'm gonna skip them because again, I don't think they really do a whole heck of a lot and it just makes taking the board apart a little bit trickier. So I'm skipping those. We're gonna have a couple extra screws, but it's all good. You guys should put them in if you want. It's not a bad idea. Take your two short screws. Remember, we're using the short guys on these, and put them in right here into your rails. There we go. And take your two regular size screws, and they go in the ends of the bumpers here at the foot pads. And then the rear is super easy. The rear just lays on. And again, you'll want to use the short screws, so we should have 4 of those. And those go into the rails here. And again, just nice and loose at first, and then you can tighten them all up once they're all in. And 2 of the regular size screws right here into the foot pad. And this is where we can start tightening everything. Cool, that's it for the underside of the board. Flip it over. And for the final step, we want to reinstall our fenders, which are super easy. Almost forgot, time for the finishing touch. All right, the finishing touch right here, we've got these sweet little rail badges that not only look awesome, but help protect your board a little bit. Ooh-wee. Look at that. That looks nice. So we're solid, and you know what? Robert needs to see his fresh new tire. We're going convertible on this one. It's summertime, it's not raining. What are we doing? Get this out of here. And that's it, you guys. That is how you switch the rails on your Onewheel GT. We got some sweet steep and deeps on here. I think Robert's gonna be super stoked. He's definitely gonna be hitting the trail this weekend on these bad boys. So that's it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. We'll try to answer as many as we can. And I appreciate you guys. You're awesome. I love you. Float on, my friends. They gone? Are we done? Yeah, I think we're good. I didn't even finish my boots during that. But we're good. Look, we finally made the video. We made it. We made it. We're done. We did it. Good job, everyone. We've finally filmed us switching rails on a board, something we've done 10,000 times. And now we've done it again. We've done it, Julian. We did it.
Good job, Jeff. We've done it.
Thanks, man.